Yo, this KueShooti, man, for the O to O podcast, man. Here we go. It's time to get to it. All right. So I know I've been covering a lot of the big U situation, a lot of aspects of the hip hop scene and all that. But I'm gonna switch it up a little bit today. Now, Saturday, we were discussing a topic about post-traumatic slave syndrome.
Specifically, Dr. Joy DeGruy looked at the history of slavery as a contributing factor in her description of post-traumatic slave syndrome. African Americans suffer from this condition due to centuries of chattel slavery, followed by institutionalized racism and oppression. Some symptoms include extreme feelings of suspicion, violence, distorted self-concept, self-doubt, and depression. I encourage you to learn more about post-traumatic slave syndrome because we are worthy.
Now, you heard a couple different opinions on, do you believe it exists or is an ailment? You heard a couple different opinions.
I can see she ain't got no good points. I just don't agree with.
No, I know she got some.
I just don't agree that it exists.
I think it exists to a certain degree without us knowing it exists, because just like certain traits get passed down off to your seed, certain emotions can. You know what I mean? Just like if a woman is pregnant and while she's pregnant throughout her term, she's just super stressed out. You know what I mean? Super emotional, super stressed out. And that can affect the baby.
Not to cut you off, but while I'm thinking about it, that's the exact reason why I don't think it exists, though. But I can explain it better. I got to dig this paper out. I can explain it better. Go ahead.
Like that victim shit, you know what I'm saying? You so if you pretty much, if you've always been told you were weak, for one, if a motherfucker can tell you that your whole race of people was weak enough to let one nigga ride around on a horse and control 100, I don't really subscribe to that shit. You know what I'm saying? It's easier to be a victim and blame the shit on somebody else than standing up and just doing you, like shake that shit
it kind of sounds like
that's what I was about to say. Kate been looking like
Kanye West for what he said when
slavery is a choice.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Now I wanted to touch on what he just said. Right?
That's crazy.
You believe?
One second, sweet. The way he delivered it was kind of fucked up.
Yeah. Do you think right now, if it was slave fields right now, that maybe, let's say we on the field, and do you think like 10 people could control a couple hundred people not to cross the gun line? That should happen right now in prison every day. Every day.
I never gave my opinion because this was a subject that was brought to me when I was incarcerated, and I actually had to read a paper on this, and the question was actually posed to me, do I believe it exists? And I actually had to write a response paper to that, and I'm gonna share that with you guys. So that's my response to this. But if you're not familiar, if you didn't watch the show and you're not familiar with post-traumatic slave syndrome, what it is, it's a as explained by Dr. Joy DeGruy, it's a theory that explains the etiology of many of the adaptive survival behaviors in African American communities throughout the United States and the diaspora. It is a condition that exists as a consequence of multi-generational oppression of Africans and their descendants resulting from centuries of chattel slavery. That is a form of slavery which was predicated on the belief that African Americans were inherently and or genetically inferior to whites. This was then followed by institutionalized racism, which continues to perpetuate injury today. Okay, I was a little stumbling over them goddamn words. I apologize for that. But I'm gonna also show you guys this short video where she kind of explains her position on it. So We're going to play that for you right now.
Syndrome is an explanatory theory that really looks at multi-generational trauma. One of the things that's difficult for people is their first response is, oh my God, that happened so long ago. We're talking about people being captured, shipped, sold, beaten, raped, experimented on, and then you have to ask the question, did the trauma continue? Yes, so 300 years of trauma, no help, freed. No help, more trauma. If it's a sustained trauma, then the impact of that is also sustained. When we look at multi-generational trauma, we're looking at people who are maybe victims of natural disasters and their families and their children and generations of folks who have experienced war. And we know that there are residual mental, emotional, traumatic impact. And what I did was I started to look at the African American experience, starting with slavery, as a real clear, long enduring trauma. So I started to see that there were clear connections between that survival behavior and contemporary living in African American experience. Audiences, I said, how many black people in my audience? I asked them, how many of you have ever met a black person that isn't black? The black person that will try to be anything else. Oh, did I mention how much Native American I have in me? Oh, and I understand based on my DNA now that my people come from Switzerland. All of a sudden, anything that I can tell you that will convince you that I'm not black, right? And everybody black knows that. Well, I have another word for it. It's called post-traumatic slave syndrome. Post-traumatic slave syndrome is exactly what it sounds like. It's multi-generational trauma, intergenerational trauma, as it relates to people of African descent. Being separated from your native land, being beaten, being sold, being raped, being experimented on, any number of things. As an enslaved African woman, you had no rights to your own body. No rights at all to your own body. And it didn't start when you were a woman. You know, that's the other kind of mythology when we talk about rapes. We're thinking about women. You think they waited till they were 18? You think few girls got to teenage years without having been raped? To imagine being a mother. Someone just comes in the middle of the night and says, you know, we have some visitors. They like young ones, so we're gonna pass her along to the visitors that night. So you can't wrap your head around that. And we want to really believe that, well, that just happened a couple of times. Well, according to a mid-1800s census, there are over 600,000 mixed-race babies born. That's a lot of sneaking out back.
Okay, now, you heard what it is, you know what it is. Okay, now, I'm actually going to get this paper published. So you will be able to find this paper, but I'm going to give you my response that I wrote when I was incarcerated to this subject. Now, do I believe that post-traumatic slave syndrome exists, or do I believe that it is a racist idea? Now, I believe it exists, but I absolutely believe that it's a racist idea. Now, first and foremost, as the writer pointed out, who's to say that black people who depreciates their value that exhibits the so-called symptoms of post-traumatic slave syndrome are actually the descendants of actual slaves, first and foremost? I believe that we take away the accountability of our own self-destructive decisions by using this as a way out of honest self-reflection. I believe that post-traumatic slave syndrome is a Caucasian mental disorder from the fact that some, not all, white Americans are traumatized by the fact that they can't control black Americans anymore. I think that the police brutality, differences in sentencing guidelines, and etc. is proof of that. I also believe that mass incarceration stems from the black male's cross-wired programming of prioritizing. Do white Americans take advantage of our ignorance? Absolutely, for sure. If we are honest, the the upper class does, white and black alike. But in retrospect, does that ignorance come from post-slavery or modern rebellion? If I'm correct in the understanding of my teachings of slavery era blacks, they were the most hopeful, modest, religious, compassionate, and sympathetic people in the world. And if I'm also correct in the meaning of post-traumatic, it means reliving the experience that gave us this ailment. And assuming I'm correct, isn't it also safe to say that the behaviors of modern day black Americans are a product of the disconnection of the slave experience, and more so the byproducts of the I can do what I want because I'm free mentality of the parents' misguided principles? You tell me. You may say that the parents were taught that way. I believe that is true. But where can we pinpoint the beginning of this moral disability? When did the modest, loyal, nurturing, God-fearing, beautiful black queen transform into this promiscuous, materialistic, money-hungry, angry, unsympathetic black woman? And where did the God-fearing, strong, protective, family-oriented, proactive, hardworking, respectful black king transform into this anti-religious, womanizing, weak, absent-fathered, lazy, anti-black, disrespectful black man without a backbone? Was it when and because of our freedom from the traumatic experience of slavery, which most cannot recall, and their parents can't because they never experienced it? Or was it somewhere along the way to the present by an unprincipled, ill-mannered, devil-may-care attitude towards authority and self-correction? You decide, but I go with the latter. And I say this as an undeterrable, pro-black, anti-justice system convicted felon of a black man. But I also say this as an anti-racist, unbiased, self-loving human being that believes 100% in responsibility of my own decisions and consequences of my own actions. So while I believe we are an oppressed people who suffers from modern day mental slavery and has intentional man-made obstacles to prevent us from being successful and the advancing into a higher economic class, I also believe that us as a black people need to stop looking for a scapegoat and realize that we hold the only key to these mental chains and disperse with the fear of change and responsibility that comes with the thought of unlocking them. The only thing that can make us inferior is the decision to be inferior in our own thinking. Now, that's my thoughts on that. So I want you to hit that like button. I want you to subscribe, and I want you to drop a comment, man. Tell me what y'all think about this post-traumatic slave syndrome. Tell me if y'all think I'm wrong. Tell me if y'all think I'm right. Shit, come for me if y'all want to. I don't care, man. Just tell me something, man. But you know, we gonna get back at y'all, man, and catch us on the show, man. And this is something we really need to tap into, man, because you know, if I'm wrong, it's something we need to change. If I'm right, it's something we need to change. So y'all let me know, man. KueShooti, O to O. We out.